That's right.
Finally.
Kiyoshi,
He
do you
cracked the
wanna
code.
you wanna
I
come
did.
on a little bit and tell us about this topic a little bit while I type out and then promote that we're in discussion time now?
Oh no.
It's so funny because I don't remember submitting this,
Haha.
but cool. No, in all seriousness, though, so avoiding awkward phases. Yeah, so this is something that you know I've been kind of. I think I started my Tumblr for menswear like back in like 2010. So it's kind of funny to like go back and think about the different kind of, I guess, genres or aesthetics or however you want to call it that I've tried out, and like the reasoning behind why I tried those things, and also why I moved away from them, and just kind of getting that through line of like where people start and where people end up, and why they start in certain places and leave those. Because I think most people that most guys that get into clothing or menswear, there's a certain thing that like a catalyst that like sets it off, and it could be for work, it could be just out of interest, could be maybe they're inspired by certain movies, but for whatever reason that becomes their entry point. But I find that very few people stick with that initial thing, especially if they're generally interested in clothes. And
Right.
I have a couple theories and ideas behind why that might be. Obviously, everyone's different, but I just find it interesting that not many people like get into a certain aesthetic and stay with it. And I think it's worth. I think when you first start on this, there's a lot of, especially like in the kind of helpful tips kind of menswear space. A lot of, maybe now it's on YouTube, but there's a lot of, well, you want to buy suits that you buy for life. You want to buy suits that are going to last forever. And that's kind of like, I think, a very misguided mentality. And something that I definitely had when I first started getting into clothing. Like, I looked at every purchase as, oh, I'm going to have this thing forever.
Right,
Now,
right.
looking back to that time when I first started getting into menswear, I've only kept three things. I kept a tan pair of like military style English boots. And I kept a really nice Italian umbrella, and I kept my barber jacket. That's pretty much the only items I still have from about 10 years ago. So, yeah, I just kind of maybe want to chat around that and see what people's thoughts were, like what got them into it, and then like what made them leave whatever style they were in or are in right now.
This is an interesting thought about, leaving styles, because, the more we talk and the more, with Heinrich and everything, it's, we talk about authenticity a lot. We talk about what feels right to you. We've talked about context and style. So this is, it's a fun follow-up that kind of puts everything all together. I'll just say that I kind of didn't have the whole like you buy it forever kind of thing, and I guess I did, but not in the realm of like I'm going to be like this cut is going to be for me forever. It was like when I bought the 30s clothing, I was like, I know I'm going to have this for as long as I can, but I also realized how like costumey it was, like in the back of my mind. So it's still like I can wear this for fun, but then I'll also need like something modern for like job interviews or whatever. So I guess with that in my mind, it was kind of easier for me to think like, okay, well, like the partition different styles for different things. I don't know if that's unique to me or people like me and Spencer who have like a vintage where we're kind of like, we're still weird, because like, our approach with menswear wasn't exactly like, oh, we want to wear the best of the best. We want to look the most classic and the most elegant and the most formal, or even the most like, timeless. It was still we were still very aware of how off we looked.
Yeah.
But obviously Spencer and I dressed way differently than we did like 5 years ago. So I'm sure that there's a little bit of that whole like changing part aspect and what awkward stages we've had in that time.
And I think one of the things about like what makes why people leave it is and why when we look back maybe at photos of us recently, like we've been like showing photos in like in the Discord of old versions of us, version like 1.0 and 2.0, not like 9.0. And it's always interesting because like it's like, why do I look awkward in these photos? You know, it's like ignore like the fit, right? Like ignore that. It's like clearly at the time when I was wearing this, I thought it was good. That's why I wore it. That's why I photographed myself wearing it. I was happy and
you're
proud
feeling
of
it, right? Yeah.
I was like proud of the wardrobe I was building, right? And you're very into it at that point. But it's like looking back, it's like, why does that person just look awkward? It's me, but it's an awkward version of me. And I've always the more I think about this, and I think the problem is that when you get something new or you're new to something, you don't have the confidence yet. You might have the arrogance of being able to wear these things and just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to wear it and so what? But you don't, these things aren't you yet. They haven't had time to settle. You haven't had time to wear them and get to the point of like mentally being comfortable wearing them and not be self-conscious while wearing them. And I feel like you often, in place of that, you do too much, right? You go over the top with it. You add you add the pocket square that's coordinated with the tie and the clip, and like maybe you've got like beads all over your wrist. I don't know. Like there's just so many things that it depends on what aesthetic you're after, but it's always like that kind of, well, I don't feel confident, so I'm just gonna lean fully into it and do like just go crazy.
Well, because that's we've talked about this kind of before, right? Where to mainstream people, being bold equals good fashion.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's that kind of idea, right? Like, oh, like, you know, I think a lot of people back in the day, right, you know, when you saw like Howard Wolowitz wearing like the plaid shirt and like the match jeans in the same color, there were a couple of people like, you know, who maybe weren't like the jocks or anything, but like other nerdy guys were like, oh, that's such a good outfit. I'm like, and even then I was like, why? Like that's not, you know, I was more concerned with like, you know, like I think Leonard was okay, you know, like a button-up shirt with like, you know, unbuttoned with the graphic. That looked more normal, but like, why would you go so bold to be like Howard Wolowitz, right? But people just associate that, so they think that, you know, the bolder you are, the more people will be like, okay, well, it's an intentional choice, maybe that's okay. But the downside is that you are aware of that and there's that dissonance, and then when you look back at it you cringe because it feels you knew it was awkward and you were overcompensating. You know, it's like I always come back to it, that picture of me taking a selfie with like Scott, his girlfriend, a bunch of our other like high school and college friends, and I'm in the back wearing a window pane suit with a rep stripe bow tie and a boater just in the background. And it's like, I mean, I probably felt awkward. I mean, the thing is, you can only conjecture about how you felt back then, because obviously you wore it for a reason. You still felt a decent amount of good in it, but I was like, I can't have been that good wearing that with other friends wearing a t-shirt and jeans at the mall. Like I wasn't even doing it. I dressed up for that. Like I can't, like, it feels weird to do that, you know?
I'm thinking about when I wore like my white linen pants with my regatta blazer to hang out in the mall.
Oh,
with you that one time.
You were the cool kid.
And I took a picture of you. Or I don't know if it was that time or if you wore it again for that, you know, because it was a good fit. But I think, you know, all of the awkward phases should happen when you're younger. Obviously they happen younger compared to where you are now because of the way time works, time dilation. But it's in the hope that, you know, that you get into fashion at a younger age, whether it, you know, and whatever that means relative, you know, do it before you're starting your career, do it while you're in college or high school, because the interactions you have don't matter as much as later. You know, I mean, you could argue maybe if you know, like, oh, dating wise, you know, whatever, but in general, right, the earlier you start, it's always going to be better than later, right? It's always better to start by experimenting as soon as you feel that need, because the more you put it off, it's going to be harder. What were you saying?
Do you think that I was gonna say, do you think that's why a lot of people that like need to dress for work, they like get those basics and then they just stop because they're already at a point where it's just like, okay, well, I need this for professional work and this meets the bar, so I'm just gonna stop. And that's why you get so much of that business casual look. Yeah.
Absolutely, I think most people dress for like 70% of people dress for work.
Yeah,
wow, I believe
would
it.
say like the only time like
I hope you're dressed for
a
work.
guy gets really like active again in like fashion like a normal person is like when he gets a divorce.
Yeah, they're
Nice.
refining themselves.
Crazy
Like-
stupid love.
It's still not
exactly.
good though. After the
And,
divorce,
like,
it's still
No.
not good
the,
fashion.
Renaissance man.
Well, the
It's
problem is
how
it's
like how to look younger. Because I want to get younger women.
It's the same thing
Yeah.
because it's the same level of awkwardness. It's just that they spend more money to do it, and there's a
Right.
certain
Mhm.
like clothing brands that are catered toward that guy, right? So it's
Yeah.
like Robert
Peter
Graham,
Millar.
for instance. Peter Millar. But Jason knows all these. So
Mm.
and it was one of those like funny things that came in my last job because I remember I had a client, really good client of mine, and he would visit, and then one day he comes in, he's like, "Hey man, we're gonna blow it out today." I'm like, "Yeah, what? Cool. Like, what's up?" Like, I haven't seen him for a minute. He's like, "Oh man, I just got finalized my divorce last week, and I'm ready to get out there and just new me. It's a new me."
Can't
Right,
get out there. So I get that a lot.
This guy,
out there.
and I try to like when you're in sales, you try to balance good advice and your taste alongside what the client
Money.
likes. I was hoping I was able to like steer him in the right direction a little bit, but there's definitely guys that I'm like, yep, you fit a certain stereotype, and I would bet you're in that like I'm buying a quote unquote divorce shirt.
Yeah, here's a bunch
right.
of Robert Graham.
Yeah. With like crazy patterns and contrast cuffs and you flip them up.
Yeah.
Let's design our perfect
God.
divorce
The
shirt.
cam
really
shirt
quick.
from Modern Family.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, to go
that's
back to the topic is like, okay, so obviously we're not getting divorced. Hopefully anytime soon.
I'm actually
what
going through a
happens-
divorce right now.
I'm curious,
Oh,
you know.
congrats.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
We can,
so many
Love
Robert
paying
Graham
alimony.
for you.
This new part.
well,
of your life.
how about this? Let's talk about when's the last time you took like a big chance in experimenting? You know, like what's something that was new? Maybe we can go around with that. Spencer, what about you? I mean, because you've experimented more like wider than I have. I think a little bit, and it's worked out for you.
guess.
Like, what was it like? What was it like getting into like the Menswear workwear thing more than tailoring? Like the initial time.
I think I was gonna say my awkward phase. I think was I don't know, like 2016, 2017, maybe when I was like. I was like, I don't really want to wear vintage anymore, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And the kind of like Menswear workwear thing was me realizing, I still like want to wear vintage. Like I still like vintage clothing. I just want to wear something different. So I guess that like that kind of just like felt more like natural to me at a point than what I was doing, which was taking like I still had like mostly vintage clothing, but I was trying to wear it in a more contemporary way, which
because I mean,
was kind of
even
weird
for a
with the stuff I
while,
had.
I was gonna say because like obviously both like tailoring, but I remember like every time we were in the car, we would listen to like folk music and like rockabilly-ish stuff or like old rock, and I get maybe in retrospect to me it makes perfect sense why you would go in that direction.
Yeah.
As like a don't want to wear the tailoring as much anymore kind of guy.
I mean, it also like it was part of it was I was in college, so it was a time when I was around people that like I've said before, my high school is very small, so like I knew everybody. So even though I dressed weird,
I mean, you wore a tuxedo. You wore like a vintage tuxedo to prom and everything.
Yeah, no one was like, here comes that freak. Like people knew me, so I was able to dress a little bit more weird. But yeah, then when I was like in college, I was like, I think I kind of want to dress a little bit more normal. And yeah, like I said, it was kind of like getting into the more like after hanging out with the Gooch brothers and Doug a little bit more and seeing the kind of more like rugged stuff, especially at like flea markets, that it didn't really feel like a big leap or an experiment. It just felt kind of be like, this was what I was looking for like this whole time.
Well, your transition from high school to college, I genuinely don't know. These were new people in college, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
not the
it's
people
like
from your high school.
I went to there were like 3 or 4 people I knew in my high school, but I didn't have
Sure.
any classes with them. I would meet up with them for like 5 minutes once a week or something because we had
so sort of
a
your
limit on
chance to
it.
get a new identity in a way, so
Yes,
a new start.
exactly.
I mean,
A
yeah,
new,
it's sort of a
A
thing.
new start, yeah.
You burnt off your fingerprints and put new ones on.
I had the
burnt
Mission
off your
Impossible skin masks.
Skin mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
The IMF is
God.
smoke and mirrors. No, that's probably like the young version of getting divorced, right? Like new start stuff, like starting.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
like starting college,
Yeah.
graduating college, starting a new job. Those are all opportunities for you
New
to try
job.
something new, right?
Mhm.
But that's I feel bad because I finished college so young that it's like I wasn't like my biggest regrets in life are like not being cool. I mean, I'm not that cool now, but like being worse, younger, and then finishing. Then I couldn't be able to be, I couldn't be like the flex on anybody because I started college wearing like V-neck t-shirt and like shorts, and then on weekends that no one saw me because I would go to my church and go to a vintage event with Spencer wearing like full vintage, but no one I knew, there was no one new there, right? And then I got into like hashtag menswear, and everyone saw me like wearing like skinny pants, really, really like kind of cropped or whatever. Like I would tailor all my chinos to be super slim. All my shirts were super slim. I mean, I could barely button them at the neck or whatever, or maybe they could fit in the neck, but like they were just like you could see my nips through them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, to the limit here. And then like wearing like tan shoes all the time, right? Like wearing fun socks and shit. But the thing is, like the good thing is that because that was like what was well, I guess not popular, but it was still like, oh, there's the fashion guy, there's the suit guy,
Yeah, this is what fashion guys look like around these times.
Yeah, in the desert in Southern California, an hour away outside of LA, where everyone else is wearing like just regular plain old stuff, or they're wearing like the Praise Camp T-shirt with like a plaid shirt on top and carrying around a guitar. But I think if we're talking about like the classic menswear awkward phrase, when I started to get more into the Armory, around the time Spencer started getting more casual, so that was about 2017. I started working. Or a little bit before that, but around 2015, 16, and then early 17, I started wearing like getting more into classic menswear, and I went from wearing the skinny Zara stuff working at the mall to wearing like sack suits that were kind of like high waisted, 3-rolled to collar roll shirts, vintage ties and loafers. And everyone went like, "Oh man, like why are you dressing all old?" But like in my head, I was still dressing modern because I still did the vintage stuff on the weekends, and like it was like relative to these people, right? And I guess it was a little awkward because it was like, oh, I'm actually wearing what I like to wear for weekend outings with Spencer, but on the regular day,
Whoa.
and it's also not as bold, like the shoulders aren't as broad, right? Like the pants aren't super wide. Like, it was like a different time and a different stage. And I don't think it was that like awkward as compared to like me wearing skinny pants for the first time, but it did take like getting used to because it was still the internal struggle of like, is this really what I'm into? Like, am I just doing this because I want to wear vintage but not super vintage? Like, it literally was like my version of what Spencer was going through, except with tailoring, and then of course you just kind of blow past it. You just kind of just keep doing it, right? Like we kind of just looked at. I know we talked about slouch and with all just about like, oh, the potential dangers of failing or getting some bad looks, but honestly, people didn't care that much. It kind of is the awkward phase to me is usually all in your head, and you just gotta keep doing it. Wear it around your friends. I remember reading that article about that guy in I think Sweden or whatever that wore dresses, and Men's Health did an interview with him, and I thought it was really nice. I don't particularly like the dresses that he picked because it's a little bit too boring, but But the idea he said is, like, if other guys out there want to wear a dress, and this could be applied to anything, like, wear it around like your family and friends, wear it around people you trust more. Like, wear it inside your house, get used to it, wear it, maybe to grab coffee, like, just a quick thing in and out, just so you wear it.
Going
And
in
then
and
the
out?
more, yeah, or go wear it in and out. And then you just keep doing it until you feel comfortable in it, And I
Mhm.
think during that time, that will tell you whether or not it's for you. Because I
Yeah.
don't believe in forcing things. I feel like, and I think everybody has a good self-awareness about what they can and can't pull off effectively.
Right.
Do you
Because
believe in chakras?
Yeah.
I
You a
don't believe- I don't
shockhead?
believe- I don't believe in.
Do you believe in miracles?
Talk
Um,
I got
Do
something
you
to
believe
show
in
you,
Santa?
little boy.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's like I'm trying to think of something recent. MJ just said I'm gonna cash on the e-boy thing. Oh, I did that. I kind of did that for a little while. Not for
Cha-ching.
not for a little while. I still kind of do that
For a longer
occasionally.
while.
But that's what the e-boy thing. Of course, you saw right the band T-shirt with like the shirts underneath, wearing all black chains, rings, and everything. I did that, but I did it in my own way. So if you look at it, probably doesn't look like an e-boy at all. but it's
Yeah.
but
It's
it's
an E
but
thing.
yeah,
It stands
I
for
started
Ethan.
to like.
I would love it if
I
you
wore,
like
like-
went through a phase where you always wore like a little lock around your neck.
Yeah.
You can do that
And
now.
it's,
Yeah.
Do it right
Yeah.
now.
like what am I, Ryuk?
Instantly.
I'm pretty sure that's a meme, right? dressing like a Shinigami,
Yeah. Well, that's
Um,
definitely like a TikTok trend, right? Like I've definitely seen like
Absolutely.
a handful
A
of
TTT.
those.
I mean, it was. I don't know. I think Spencer, because I told Spencer like 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm kind of into this whole thing, and I think it could be just generically like indie alt with a little bit of e-boy, or because e-boy is a little bit
I
too.
mean, it's like
goth.
if you just like look at like wide high waisted pants with like a sweatshirt and a button up underneath it, like hell, I wear that. Like I wore that last week.
I think I remember there was an article about that too, where it was all like, is e-boy just prep, but like even more dark academia? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean it's all classic. But I mean, I know Spencer was like concerned early on because I was like, I openly said like the e-boy thing is kind of cool. Also because like I was figuring out like what my type of girl was and how I want to date and who I want to approach. But in the end, it just became me wearing a lot more black. Wearing like the black sawtooth Westerner a lot. Love wearing that thing. Wearing the Uniqlo wide leg pants, wearing the black jeans, and then wearing it with these two like Western rings that I got. And I felt a little awkward at first because like usually my casual Ethan was like kind of like suit like Evan Kenori wide leg work suit kind of stuff, or it was like closer to Spencer where it was like, oh, I'm wearing like short coat or a leather jacket with jeans. But then I found like this kind of look where it was like kind of what Kiyoshi does, right? Where it's like wearing black, but it's like casual but elegant at the same time.
Yeah.
And it kind of just worked. It kind of just, I didn't feel that awkward either. But I know I was a little bit hesitant, But speaking of that, MJ, how about you? What are some like how was it, transitioning into like menswear or finding, what you like? Did you feel awkward at all wearing your stuff out because our friends don't do that?
Not really, because I kind of got fast tracked into the good
That's
stuff.
true.
Right?
That's true.
Like I'll forever cite, being friends with Ethan and Spencer, as in relation to like wearing new stuff or wearing stuff that I didn't previously, or I guess coming from not having a
Did it
a
feel
style,
awkward though?
quote
Like,
unquote.
going from wearing like a Dragon Ball Z t-shirt and like baggy jeans to I guess you didn't really wear that baggy of jeans, but like going from like what you wore before to like wearing like I'm thinking of some like MJ's
Cargo
greatest
shorts
hits.
and
Oh yeah, you wore cargo shorts a lot.
Oh, so good.
But going from that to like one of the best fits is when we went to the SoCal Asian thing when you wore the band collar shirt with a turtleneck base layer, and then you did short coat with jeans like with it. Like
Mhm.
that was like that's so easy, and I know you've worn variations of that all the time, but like did that ever feel weird?
Maybe at first, yeah. I don't think. Well, it's not as weird as maybe other people would when they're getting into stuff. Because I was still like around maybe not
Ethan
the
and Spencer.
majority. Yeah, maybe not the majority of the group where I felt like too out of place. Like I was either around you or both you and Spencer or like other menswear people
Right.
at when we hang out
Yeah.
and stuff. Even if it was just like our core group of friends where
Hey, they don't care what we wear.
yeah,
but like
it's still it was still easy for me, I feel like.
right.
Especially in the first place, I never really like not to say I didn't care, but it wasn't that big of a deal to me.
Right.
NBD.
What were the do you remember any kind of awkward experimentations that you had, like because I mean, yeah, you got fast tracked, but you don't wear it the same way me and Spencer do, right? Like even if I gave you like a chore coat that I didn't wear anymore, or these like or the OG 107s, right? Like it's still up to you to wear them, and those were still different than like even the Goodfellow like mid to high rise selvage jeans that you got. This is still different. Like what was that like awkward phase or hesitance?
Maybe figuring out how to put stuff together. I mean,
Okay.
I know I'm just kind of repackaging what you just said, but right, it's like I don't think I looked at stuff. I mean, I still don't really look at stuff and just kind of know. Like, there's been a
Right.
couple times where I've like put stuff on and just taken it off and be like, I don't think this is it.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
You have the self-awareness.
yeah. There's been a couple times where I wore stuff out and I'm like, there might have been a lapse in judgment.
Hey, we all have every once in a while,
But yeah, I never was too hard on myself. That's like
That's
the
good.
Well,
that's like the short and sweet of it.
That is short
I don't
and
think
very sweet.
I don't. Well, yeah, that's like another thing. I don't think anybody should be too hard on themselves. It's as
Hey,
far as
Gentleman's
clothes.
Gazette, there's a video that
Um,
says how to stop being your own worst critic.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. Is that like a new
MJ's awkward. Jeremy says MJ's awkward face is talking about the awkward face.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it's also that compared to, I feel like most of us here in the voice chat, most of us here in the Discord, I'm still early or like in the beginning stages. I know we can't really gauge or quantify where we are in like our personal style and stuff, but as far as being into clothes as a hobby, I've not been into it that long. It's probably what, less than 5 years. Like it's probably more like 3 or 4, right, at this point.
Yeah. Well, the the episode coming out in 2 weeks is about style, like communities and friends. And I think that maybe when we look back at all those old pictures, I guess I can't say exactly for like Kiyoshi because he's been in the Menswear blogging game for a while. But a lot of my early stuff happened before the blog, and before I could hang out with Spencer regularly. Because back then, he was in high school, I was in college. We have school. We're not gonna hang out literally, right? I mean, we still are, but it's still, it was that aspect of, the awkward stages are more apparent when you don't have a community to kind of bounce your ideas off of, or like we said, well, if it's a bad fit, we'll let you know, like we'll tell you if it's bricked. But it's also that idea of, now you're dressing with other people in mind, like Spencer said this, I think last week, we're like, okay, would the guy that I like think this is cool? Like, is that an indicator of how well I'm doing?
It wasn't even that. It was like, if I saw someone post a fit pic wearing this, would I think it's cool?
Oh yeah, exactly. That's another way of saying like awareness, right? Self-awareness, having a good healthy dose of not being too confident. I mean, that sounds bad, but you should have confidence. But it's like it's a give and take where you should have some self-critique without tearing yourself down. It's and that's just a constant journey with any kind of artistic expression, right? You still have to figure out if it's good or not, because otherwise then you're you're being careless, right? And we talked about that before, where then
Yeah.
it's just totally different. Matt, what about you? What do I know? Because you're kind of similar with MJ. You're still feeling stuff out, still trying hobby. You're a
feelers.
hobbyist, right? You with awkward phases in experimenting and trying new things.
Yeah, so I would say like closed and enter into it until like a decade ago when I was getting into high school, and I was really like it all happened at once with like 3 different interests, and like I was getting into Adam Lambert and really loved his sort of look, and I also was getting into Johnny Depp and all his accessorizing and all that stuff, and then I had like 5 of my favorite musicals all happened to be around the Victorian: Jekyll and Hyde, Sweeney Todd, Les Mis, Phantom, Love Never Dies, Sweeney Todd. They're all sort of around this area. So it was a combination of like that Adam Lambert punk, always wearing eyeliner look, also with Johnny Depp sometimes wearing eyeliner, but like you got this, the accessories, rings, necklaces, and then also the like vests and like shirts and like tailoring, beginning with tailoring and vintage, and even those older pieces, whether it be repo or vintage or all that stuff. And back then, it was a thing of you guys kind of talk about sort of the confidence of doing it and not as self-awareness. Where I'd say like now, where it's like now I appreciate some of that form, some of that structure of like a Victorian garment. But my thought like now would be like, oh, I like that, but here's the look that maybe kind of pays homage to that without literally being, no, I'd like a repro or the actual like garment of a frock coat, and then I'll just wear that like it's a normal thing, like wearing a cutaway coat in high school, because it's like, yeah, I like it, so I'll wear it. That was just how I thought back then. And by the time I got to high school, I was in such a better place mentally because I was in a better friend group that was actually, supportive and all that stuff, and like a community with like choir and eventually theater and all that. So I was able to just kind of, with wild abandon, lean into these looks and, wear the eyeliner and all that stuff. And it was just a very happy, very confident time. And I didn't really have that question of, okay, well, maybe I could be a little bit more socially fluent. It just, like I said, didn't enter into it. And eventually, once I got to undergrad, I was sort of putting that aside and trying to do the collegiate Ivy kind of stuff in the beginnings of that. It would switch. Right. It would switch from being tuned into clothing, but then there would definitely be times in the beginnings of undergrad where I would definitely not care, and I would just wear layers of winter clothing with no interest in how it looked and just like not tuned in whatsoever, and just buying everything from the gift shop. But I would say like that was sort of in high school. Those are kind of my awkward stages, just like, wearing girlfriend's skinny jeans and, even though this, it's probably not the best idea and all this. And like, like I said, cutaway coat. And I didn't really have the hair. I wish I could have done, this was during Adam Lambert's Trespassing album period, but I wish I could have done his hair with the yellow highlights and like short sides and being on top. But I did theater a lot, so I couldn't really dye my hair. So I really just kind of wanted to keep it natural. So,
and I was still leather?
Yeah, I had like this like Wilson's. It was like this double-breasted zip, high cut like leather vest, and then I had like a Wilson's leather, long leather black trench coat, and then I already told you about those zip tops. Yep. But then they saw me in it, and they're like, "Oh, okay, no one's gonna. This guy's not gonna do anything." Yep, friendly gentleman. I had those pinstripe fedoras that were so great in the 2010s. Yep,
you were Patrick Stump. You were the lead singer of Fall Out Boy.
But this is the thing, is like I loved like Adam Lambert and Johnny Depp, but I was just a kid who looks like this, and I was wearing like those oval silver framed glasses, and I had swoop bangs and long hair, and I did not look like those people. So me wearing it was a totally different vibe, and just very different. So it was interesting for sure. Leather, don't worry, Jason, all the leather existed from the waist up. There's no pants. I don't think there were any leather pants involved.
What about like now? Is there anything that you've incorporated like within like recently that you thought was a little awkward in the beginning that then you started like, oh, this actually makes sense with my style, or is there anything that you tried and you're like, oh, fuck this doesn't work, like as of like right now with classic menswear?
I'm trying to think of like that last thing you said, like if there's anything like maybe we talked about here where it's like, okay, but then I actually tried it and it didn't work, I guess. And I guess it is on me, but it just like the getting the leather. I was hunting for like a leather jacket, sort of like the moto thing, the black leather, And just the one I
Mhm.
happened to get, I thought it was pretty. One thing I tend to look for online is the sleeve to the end of the jacket ratio. Like if it's obviously longer than the other, then the proportions are a little bit better than if it's matching. I hope that made sense. So it's just like, okay, yeah. And then I grab it, and then I look at it, and when I actually wear it, it was like from the 80s vintage, and it was just a little bit on me. It was just a little bit thicker. It wasn't as maybe slim as maybe other stuff that's a bit more flattering on me. And it ended up going to like a length that it didn't match like my high rise pants, So I tried that, and I tried different ways to make it work. I tried my more wider fit pants and sort of the more slim leg stuff I have too, but it just didn't work out. So that was something I kind of left behind, I think.
Did you force it? No. Oh, you said you left it behind.
Yeah, I didn't bring it with me now, but it was a big debate. I did try it a lot, and I ended up saying, it doesn't work as well. And maybe there are a couple instances, but I don't really like things that really only work very hyper specific ways, and I like being able to be comfortable in it. So, and again, I would say that's on me. I'm still trying to like figure out the buying stuff, and I'm not always as great getting my sizes correct, and so I could have made sure that, hey, this was exactly this instead of going for it. But you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, that's that what you said about hyper specific stuff. I feel like the more you get into style or fashion at all, right, you start to branch away from, okay, well, I don't need another navy blazer, right? You don't need you don't need the thing that works for everything. Maybe you do need the hyper specific item, but then it becomes pretty tough when the rest of your wardrobe doesn't support it, or you just you do all the fits you want with that thing, and then all of a sudden now you don't wear it because you can't do anything else with it,
Yeah.
And
those are certainly good. There are good places for those hyper-specific items, I'm sure. Yeah, for sure.
Right, but it does. I personally think it does result in that kind of awkward phase where, like, you only wear it the same way every time, and I feel like most people here, they outfit repeat, right? And they, we've talked about that, so maybe they're okay with like doing that look every single time. But it's really tough if you don't have that, aka me, because I don't do that.
Well, it's a challenge, right? It's always
a challenge,
like,
which
what
is
new
why
ways I can do it.
the more I think about this, the more everyone's talking. I don't think I have anything like super hyper specific. I think I tend to force things to work together as much as possible. Like it's like, okay, like I obviously don't have OG 107s, right? And those are kind of like the classic olive chino. They're not too wide, they're not too slim, they're perfect for most things. But all I have are like the wide leg, the P44s or P43s, whatever the one is, the one that doesn't have the ass pocket. But I love those pants, and I know they're like I guess they're not that hyper specific, but I guess to some it might be. But I wear that like across like everything, right? I think even the LL Bean sport vest, I've worn with like a couple of different. I've worn it with like a turtleneck. I've worn it with like a coat on top. I've worn it on its own with cords. I think I naturally don't buy anything that's incredibly specific that can only work in one way. Right. One thing that I have thought that I currently I'm looking at as I turn around that I don't really wear a lot. I'm still trying to figure it out. Is my down vest. I bought that like I guess 2 years ago, or like 2019 December, whenever that was. I just said when that was. Yeah, it was the PTO. It was the fucking PTO holiday sale, December 2019. Yeah, but I don't wear it that much, and I don't know if I don't think it's awkward, but I think that I guess if this counts as awkward, then it is. But it's like the idea, like when I put it on, I'm like, you know what? Like, no, this doesn't feel like the right fit for it. Like I'll put on like a sport, like I'll put on my utility vest instead because it's not as bulky or something. Or
I was gonna say, I feel like you've gotten to a point where your wardrobe is very curated, so it's easy to work. But do you ever when you buy things, do you know, oh, that's exactly how I'm gonna wear it, or do you buy things where it's like, I know what this is. I know like historically the significance of it. I don't know exactly how to wear it yet, but I will save it and like try it. And even if I don't know, just figure it out. Or what's your mentality in regard to that? Like, do you have
I
a
think
plan?
I think you got out the end there a little bit. I think Spencer's kind of the same way because sometimes you find things that are just cool. That's just kind of how vintage picking is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you buy it, and then because it's usually cheap enough, you'll say, "I'll figure it out later."
Okay.
It's kind of like it's also kind of like, and we'll touch back with Kiyoshi and everyone else in a second. But it's like when you're maybe on 18 East or you see something and you're like, oh, I gotta cop it because otherwise you'll lose out on the opportunity forever.
Yeah.
And you'll figure it out kind of later on, right? Like you know that there is at least one or two outfits you could make with it, and
Right.
then you'll you'll figure it out. And with that down vest, it's like I knew. Like I've seen Spencer, or I've seen a couple of people wear it. That's why I bought it, right? You've seen like Newton Street Vintage wear some. We've seen Chase wear it. We've seen a lot of people wear quilted, or like the down vest, the puffer vests.
Right.
But for me, I bought it. It was cheap. It's still like, oh, I don't want to just rip off their fits. Even though I've also ripped off fits. It's still like, it's got to
Sure.
feel authentic to me,
Yeah.
and that's something of course we all know about.
Put your
the
spin
whole,
on it.
And I mean, yeah, the utility vest works better for the more tailored look that you have.
Yeah, because I got that after I got the down vest,
Mhm.
and it worked out. It worked out for everything I wanted from it. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna use that. So maybe this is the awkward phase we're talking about. I haven't really worn it out much. I've worn it like to like it's cold. You wear it with I love wearing it over a hoodie like
Mhm.
Spencer does with his Browns Beach or like Newton Street Vintage. But it hasn't been like a fit, even though it's still intentional. It's still not like, oh, this is Ethan M. Wong doing this look. Like it's still not there yet. I don't know. So I'm still in it with you guys too. It's still there's a couple of pieces, maybe not like a whole look. Like I'm not trying the e-boy thing or like, oh, I'm gonna try out prep, even though I've done workwear. Like it's still not that big.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't exist that way. Maybe it really is like, okay, you like workwear, but then you start buying an OCBD, and it's like, whoa, well, hold on, now this is like, it's not a popover, it's not a work shirt, it's just clean. Like I don't know how it's gonna work with everything else. This is just my version of that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering, like how. If your like casual style is kind of like change because you spent the last year really honing your like tailored style.
Yeah, and now it's like there now,
Yeah, so
and
are we gonna see a complete transformation honing of your casual look, or maybe
Well, I
you'll
feel
figure
like
out how to wear it, or maybe you'll say no, this is not for me and toss it.
Well, I think casual style's pretty much there with like the kind of like Japanese wide fit look, but again, that's because it's still very close to the ideas of tailoring. I still, if we're talking about that, I still haven't figured out if I just want to do that or because like this sounds pretty sad, but I feel like I've grown out of like my workwear phase. Like I did it with Spencer a little bit, but I still don't do it as much.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I still wear like a lot of like. I still do like knit t-shirt or like a sweater with like military chinos and then like a cool, like this robe thing or like the utility vest or like.
Well, there's less of it on the tailored side, which it sounds like you've been exploring more recently, right? So maybe
I don't know.
That.
It's still awkward. I will say that I still felt awkward wearing Milsurp, especially next to Spencer, because I feel like it's just not me. And maybe the music one will the music episode kind of touches on it a little bit. But it's still that kind of idea of how you create how I create outfits. But anyway, let's move on a little bit here. Jason, let's talk about you with experimenting because you told us either was it last stream or just we were just talking where tailoring is relatively new, right? Like 4 years compared to like my like 7,
Yeah.
What was that like for you or whenever you experimented and had an awkward face? Tell us about that.
Well, like I'd always enjoyed tailoring, always.
Yeah.
I was just poor.
As above, so below.
Yeah. But like in high school, I was sort of a stereotypical. I was stereotypical, but I was, like one of the, the emo kids, right? I had, I wore the women's skinny jeans, from Hot Topic,
of course,
and that sort of thing, right? And it was, and it had obviously had its flair of genuineness, right? Because obviously I still wear some of that stuff now, just mixed in. I still like a good band tee. Still love My Chemical Romance.
Nice. Respect.
As most people do.
Right.
And then it was really when I moved to New York City. In college, I wore like sweatpants all the time because I was in film school, so we had like 12-hour days. Like sweatpants and shorts because I was in Florida. But then I moved to New York City, and I got a job at Bloomingdale's, so you had to wear a suit. You had to wear a black suit at Bloomingdale's to working there.
So specific.
So that's now they loosened that rule up, I guess, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. Right.
But so that was sort of my introduction to a different world of tailoring. Instead of like that whole idea of like dressing up for like a dinner or something. I was doing it every day. I put on a black suit every day, tie and all that. And so at the same time of being exposed to this sort of, because in Bloomingdale's it's a very alpha sort of suit style, right? Everyone wants everything tight.
Realtors.
Even to this day, it's the same kind of thing. I've walked through before. Yeah, it's very that realtor, that finance bro kind of thing. And that's a fault of like the, I'll say generationally, like the millennials, they're fashion wise, a lot of them are still stuck in 2010.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But anyway, yes, that was so at the same time I was exposed to this sort of like alpha version of suits, which I didn't really like. I knew I liked wearing the suits, right? I knew I liked the way I felt in them. But I didn't like the way they all looked. I didn't like this whole idea of the extremely proper, the double Windsor and the perfectly folded pocket squares. I didn't like that. Because again, I had just come out of I was an emo kid.
So you already didn't like it, so it wasn't really awkward to do it your way. It kind of was the opposite.
Right.
You knew a version.
Right. I wanted to do it differently because I didn't like the way this was. I didn't know why I didn't like it. I knew I didn't like it. So then obviously I took the flip side and I went into like looking into like the vintage thing, and I got into like that whole Gentleman's Gazette thing.
Oh no.
And it was like, but at the same time, it's like I didn't like that either.
Right.
It just seemed like I didn't like all this whole thing, and like the videos about manners. This is how gentlemen. I'm like, that's not like
Get the fuck out of here, right?
Where did you get your basics from? If that makes sense or applies, like where did you like
H&M? Like I get thinking most of H&M. I was poor. I worked at Bloomingdale's. They paid you like barely minimum wage.
Yeah.
And then made it impossible to make any sort of commission.
So okay, so to get back to the kind of like the awkward phases, like when you started to do the cut of suit you have now, did it ever feel you had to grow into it? Like,
Yeah, well, because when I was first started with Dave, with the stuff with Dave, it was like I wanted, it was like, doing like a 7-inch bottom, and even though it was kind of uncomfortable, I was like, oh, whatever, right? And then now the suit I make, suits we make now, like, the bottom. I mean, the bottom it's a like a 15-inch circumference, which obviously isn't, it's not wide, but it's also not like skinny or anything. It's for me, it's I like the way it feels. For me, it feels like a pair of sweatpants kind of thing.
Start from the bottom. Now you're there.
So like there are these I have a bunch of suits now from like various things from Dave or like samples of mine, and then it's funny, the earliest one there's like literally like a gradation in them. The earliest one I got was like really slim, then the next one's a little less, then a little less, until you get to the one I made, right, the sample I got for my brand, and it's it's looser like almost in every way. And it's a very, much more relaxed kind of thing. And it was that, there was that phase in the middle, right, where I knew I didn't I knew I didn't want to be on either end of those spectrums, right? I didn't want to be in the vintage
Right.
side. I didn't want to be in the alpha side. And so it was a little bit of there's a lot of trial and error to get to where I am, and it was the same thing, like, it kind of sort of this whole aspect, right? These alpha guys, it was like, and the vintage guys and the alpha guys, they didn't like tattoos. They were like, oh, those aren't, you want to be clean and, clean cut. It was like, that's not me, because at heart, I still had this sort of, this very emo, this very punk sort of thing going on, inside me, right? Because it was how I was it was what I was very influenced by. But I also wanted to be, I wanted to show this interest, obviously, in like tailoring. So there's like nothing was really awkward. It was just they had this weird transitional period in the middle. I did the same thing that you did, like the tan shoes. It was like, oh, these, people told me to wear tan shoes, and I took the advice of like the people, the shoe people at Bloomingdale's. I didn't know anything about shoes. Like, oh, you got to wear tan shoes. I'm like, okay. And they were always like a size too big. And so obviously they were like, a size or a half size or a size too big, plus like the extremely skinny, like express suit I was wearing.
Yeah.
I fucking looked like I was wearing clown shoes.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
Ouch.
literally turned me off from like Oxfords and wingtips for so long. Because in my head, I always saw clown shoes when I thought about them.
And yet now you wear lug sole shoes.
I do. Now I am.
Is the irony lost on you, or
Yeah, no, it's not.
I don't want to wear clown shoes. I'm gonna get shoes with the biggest sole ever.
I'm gonna wear Doc Martens.
I think Doc Marten wingtips.
That's the stuff. Oh my god! Get on that.
When I think about that, getting confident to do your own thing and being around other people who might be doing it differently, like. I definitely, it might not be overtly awkward, I say, wearing like a skinny suit among like vintage people or hanging out with Spencer, because I think, sometimes I did wear that stuff around Spencer and it would look so different. But obviously posting on Style Forum wearing like, a Spirit Point collar, but with like a more natural, like, maybe not 30s, but like a 60s jacket, and wearing like polo Ralph Lauren flannels that were tapered to be a little bit kind of Ambrosy, more classic, modern, on the modern end of classic. It's still not as wide as I used to. Like, that was still kind of awkward, I would say. And it was an idea like, and I'm trying so hard to make these two things work instead of just fucking owning it. And it's, of course, it's at that stage where I was already becoming something, and I'm sure Spencer's the same way, and of course all of us. But it's that idea that, maybe we're still not at the ideal that your mind thinks that you are just yet.
Right.
Think about that one for a while.
Dropping some bombs.
I'll chew on that.
And that's like a loaded question, because it's like, like we talk about like POV and everything, but sometimes, there's always like, are you,
your mind is just a construct of your brain, man.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's still true. We're like, even like that fit I wore today, right? With the rain jacket, the soft shoulder jacket with the Spirit Point 30s tie, wide leg pants, and like loafers. It's still great, but the pants, I don't know if I would design them that way, right? So it's like, is that still awkward for me? Is that something I'm like, am I reconciling it in my head? Does that exactly count as an awkward phase until I'm there? Again, like the steps are so minimal, the more and more confident you get, but it's still, awkward is just maybe that awkward is another phrase, another way of saying, are you 100% comfortable? And then we could bring all this in here and saying, okay, what percentage of 100% are you comfortable? There's all that. We can't. Well, as I said, we can't quantify it, right? It's still so. Right. It's still such a fucking sliding.
Well, even
thing,
like
right?
with my fit today, right? Obviously, my today's fit wasn't wasn't like menswear. Was under no
different. Yeah, it's different.
Hashtag menswear.
Yeah.
But when I like threw, I was like, oh, I just wanted to wear a t-shirt today, and I just threw that t-shirt on with like, the pants. I was like, oh, I felt super good in that fit.
Yeah.
Like walking around the house before I left, it was like, oh wow, I feel really good. Like it felt really good. Obviously because I'm, wearing my band tees, which has that, that genuine, the authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I'm wearing pants that I designed, which is also a cool thing, too.
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, it really helps the more control you have over everything. Like the less you feel like you're defaulting or you're doing something that you feel like you have to. Like, once
Right.
you have the intent behind it, I think it lessens the awkward feeling. Or if you are awkward, you know that it's a fleeting moment.
Right.
You
It
know,
was like my whole
it'll pass.
Navy suit thing. I never bought a Navy suit, so I had to make a sample because I was like, if I'm
Yeah.
gonna get a Navy suit, I don't want just some random Navy, And there's
I
like,
hope
want
you're
your own
writing
Navy
everything
suit.
I'll
off,
make one.
man. I hope you're taking Kiyoshi and my advice and everyone's advice here, just writing everything literally off, dude. That'll do it. Well, cool. Well, let's talk to Ivan, who has another similarly kind of bold outlook and style, at least compared to what a quote regular person would think.
A normie.
Tell us about the awkward phase. Tell us about the awkward phases there, and also about the awkward phases about incorporating Ivy later on.
So it's funny that you guys say that the most awkward phases are in high school and college, because I'm actually in college right now.
There you are.
You're living it.
You're in the shit.
Yeah.
So
you'll look back on this differently. So watch.
This is your wartime.
this is my
Oh
worst
my
time.
God.
Yeah.
So I got into menswear in like middle school, but I was very much into like the late Victorian, Edwardian,
Nice.
frock
we've seen
frock
it in
coats.
the Discord.
Bought a
frock
bicycle.
coats and morning coats and just long coats in general. So in middle school, all day, every day, I wore a trench coat because it was my
No.
Yeah.
yep. Even in the summer.
Pumped up kicks.
Hey.
What? Over my
Just asking
uniform,
about
it
your
was-
shoes.
Oh, yeah, they were just regular shoes, nothing
Okay,
special.
just
It was
checking.
just the coat.
Okay.
So after that, I sort of like moved on to suits, and there wasn't the only source of knowledge that I could find about menswear on the internet was like Real Men, Real Style, Alpha M,
Oh no.
Gentleman's Gazette, and they
Yeah.
preached classic menswear and saying, "Oh, you have to wear this every day to be taken seriously."
Huh.
Oh, you never know when someone's gonna hand you a $100,000 check or some other bullshit.
I'm still waiting for someone to do that.
Hey, you still don't know that. You
I don't
still
know. Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
could have missed out on it if you're still wearing your like standing collars and stuff like that. Maybe you could have gotten a couple grand by now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel
so
like Real Men, Real Style was the perfect in between. Like the deep dive was Gemma's Gazette, and then like just Jose was just
Well,
the
that
complete
is what they
modern
like
shit.
about him, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but Real Men, he's in the middle. He has a little historical context, and that you can soak it a little bit, but he still puts it in today. So, yeah, I think
And
back
all that,
then that's
all that military heritage as well.
Yeah, all that military
You
heritage.
need
it
to
added
have
up.
the military heritage.
But I
so so for like the first 2 years of high school, whenever I could, I wore a suit and tie or a jacket and tie, and I really tried to get into that gentleman aspect, the gentleman life. And it wasn't until like 11th grade that I started watching Jeeves and Wooster, and I got into vintage. Yeah, so, and then it wasn't until like lockdown started, after I left high school, that I was like, wait a minute, I'm 17 years old, going on to 18. I don't need to be a gentleman. So, and then when I joined the Discord, I sort of found Ivy, and I incorporated that with vintage. I should also mention that whenever I hung out with friends, I also wore like suits and spats and all that sort of thing.
Love a spat.
But they didn't let you feel awkward about it, or did you?
Yeah, was it a good support group?
Yeah, they were fine about it. They didn't really bother me about it. But I definitely looked awkward in front of a group of t-shirt teenagers.
Sure.
Classic.
Many a photo.
Those t-shirt teenagers.
Yeah.
That's what they called
Well,
us.
Did you So when you started incorporating Ivy, did you feel awkward at all there? Because that was still like a kind of more dressed down version of what you were doing already, or were you okay with it?
Well, I got into Ivy, like I said, after I joined the Discord. So, and this is during lockdown, so I can't really like go out and see anyone. But since Ivy is like very much collegiate, and I'm in college, I really can't wait to go to college and wear all those fits with blazers and rep ties.
Okay,
that's really exciting.
Yeah, when it feels more comfortable, I feel like again it lessens the awkwardness.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it's like as I said, I think if you start experimenting, in the thing that makes you comfortable, it's not gonna be awkward. Even at the beginning, I think you're gonna be able to feel it, gonna know it's right.
Gotta feel good.
Yeah.
I know why I say it like that.
Bum, 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 bum. It's hard not to sing it.
Well, cool. Thank you, Ivan. Henrik, let's talk. I heard you're ready.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Tell us about awkward. Tell us about awkward.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've had an awkward phase.
Huh.
I'm not sure.
You've been perfect your whole life.
It's not the flex. I mean, I have joked before that my life has been a continuous breeze, which is
Okay, no, that's the flex. That's where it becomes the flex.
Even as a joke.
No problem.
Must be nice.
Yeah, but but it's not the experience that you just shared. And so, I mean, of course, there is this sort of high school integration into some kind of peer group and so on. I talked about that before, where the Tommy Hilfiger jeans was like a big deal when I was in high school. And it's like it's not that long ago, but that was like a dividing line of if you were invited to parties or not. But that's not really awkward phase the way we talk about it now. It's sort of when you actually start reflecting on style, and that was different, since I'm not that old. If you keep insisting that,
no,
but it is pre-internet.
No.
It wasn't the internet that did this. When I wanted something, or figure out I needed something, I needed a shirt and a tie.
Mm-hmm.
They were back then. That infrastructure, at least in like a big European city, was there. It would be like a small shop. You go in there, the person who worked there would be an old person, often like an old woman in her like 60s and 70s, who had a lifetime behind her. It was not a cool person that tried to sell you stuff. It would be like a counter. It wasn't like racks. You couldn't. I went in like the Burberry store in Vienna. There's no coats hanging. You have to go to a person. They will go in the bag, find something your size, tell you about this is it, this is how you wear it, this is the classic paradigm, and then you sort of, you want it or not. Like there's not that much more to it. And when I needed a tie, there was like a haberdashery type of old school place that would sell them. It was like it's stored just for gloves.
That's cool.
And which was like catered to like, the evening wear crowd, and so you could get all the different classic evening wear style of gloves there, and you could get them from wild boar to peccary and whatever or even like simple cotton gloves to go with your white tie or whatever. For like a one-off thing. So you were sort of that was less stressful than going to like a big department store, which they also had, but then you could never find anything. So I was just, from the outset, very much prepared. Okay, I'm going to pay for this tie. I'm going to need one tie. I'm going to have a small wardrobe, so it's not a big deal. And then I go and get like a silk rep tie that this woman has worked there all her life sold me.
I love that approach where it's like, instead of just like someone just trying to shove a sale down the throat for their own thing, like just like a master, and then like present the info and not try to force it. Just like, all right, so you want it or not? Like you said, I love it, especially if you're not trying to get a whole lot of clothing.
Yeah, and in some cases, that person would probably not even prefer me not to come in. It's like,
yeah,
that's kind
of really putting me out, man.
Old style. Yeah, they don't. And that was like an education in a sense. Like you couldn't. First of all, you weren't like left to your own devices in like a sea of clothing unless that's what you wanted. And it was like had a certain allure. I think actually in the meantime, most of those places are gone. They haven't survived like the last few decades of retail, even in large cities. But that is, how you how you bought sort of simple things, and I ended up with some silly things. Like I had some sort of like a silk shirt that has some like weird collar embroidery, and for a while some shirts had these like 2 buttons. You know, you remember these?
Oh,
Yeah.
But, like the top button had like a double button, so
Yep.
you could unbutton it.
Yeah.
You could half unbutton. There's like silly shit like that did make part of my wardrobe for a while, but it
People
wasn't
still
like
wear
major
those.
for. Yeah, I guess like
You see 'em
business guys
sometimes.
still want them. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Just
know.
being
Weird.
different. Not in a good way.
Think different, yeah. Steve Jobs
Yeah.
would have loved those.
You
Yeah,
would have.
so you get the classical style was not disseminated through here, even like Friends either. That wasn't. It
Wasn't their
sort of just,
bailiwick.
yeah, there was. So it was just whether you were ready to wear certain things or not. If you wanted to wear a tie, which you did in certain situations, so it wasn't. It was a very, very different way of going about things. Now, sure, there are certain things that you can lean in, and awkwardness does occur. Like when I bought the Stetson Open Road a couple of months ago, I was like, okay, I'm crossing the Rubicon in a sense here. Like this is like a bigger deal. But that's actually maybe illustrative of how I approach it a little bit too, because I often found it's easier to lean all the way in than to, like I could have gotten what's the other one? The more fedora styles that doesn't have.
The
Yeah.
Stratoliner.
The Stratoliner. I could have
Yeah.
gotten the Stratoliner, which is like,
yeah.
I guess theoretically or practically maybe easier to wear. You see more of them maybe and such, but then it's sort of, that for me would have been awkward. It's much less awkward to go full hog, to go like whole hog with something, because it's when you don't commit that some of that stuff might appear. And maybe the only thing I wear today that I didn't wear when I was in college or in the early years after would have been like, I didn't wear milsurp back then. I came close a couple of times, but like milsurp in Europe doesn't work as well. You don't have access to the cooler stuff.
Yeah.
So that was like the only thing that sort of is that it wouldn't find in any way. But since then, I've just it's more systematic. Clothes was not like an important part of my life, but you just got the things when you needed those things. So actually, I was a bit at sea when I came to the US. Like, well, how the hell do I do this? Because there's nowhere good to buy stuff. Go to Macy's and there's nothing you can get.
Well, coming to a completely new place and trying to figure out what is that new version to me here. I'm sure that was overwhelming, maybe perhaps.
Yeah, I struggled. I kind of stopped buying clothes for a couple of years, even because I couldn't.
Wow.
Because I couldn't find. I didn't know where to go. eBay wasn't as easy to navigate. Felt like. And yeah, like I ended up like trying to go to Macy's or Bloomingdale's or something, and this was just, what the hell is this? When I usually would buy like some Ralph Lauren stuff or something, just like ultra basic, like Ralph Lauren jeans or something.
Sure.
And then it's like the rest is just, it was a disaster. Like 2008, 2009, 2010, like normal retail was a disaster. Like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's like right before like the whole hashtag menswear movement.
Yeah.
Like, and also like the like American lumberjack, Americana kind of look even popped off too. So that's like right before it switched over.
It was bad. It was a desert. Huh?
That's a major indictment of American fashion or lack thereof.
Right.
Because Jake, if you walked into J.Crew in 2009, what did you find? I don't know. I can't remember.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean that was before the Drexler era. I think
A lot of bad bitches.
A lot of bad
like,
bitches.
That's right.
Well, that's like that. Maybe that the reliance on like because that era, like you don't have the guidance of walking into a place. That's why all those online communities started, right? And why people today are so, I don't know, dependent's not the right word, but we rely on this kind of thing to kind of make sure we're heading in the right direction and to minimize that awkward phase.
Well, I think people are.
But other than,
well, I was going to say, people are relying more on the internet communities because I think sadly there's just less and less and less places like the ones Heinrich was describing, where it's a little local shop that's been there for decades, worked by the same people. There's
or at
not
least
really
hard to
anything
find
like
that.
around me. So
No.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, but that's why I like the South Coast Plaza. I mean, even though I didn't like get help, I had a better sense like these guys knew what was up, you know. But other than before we kind of wrap up, other than the open road dilemma, I guess. And is there anything else? I mean, what else are you looking down to experiment with, or do you think that you're still going to experiment?
I don't know. Jewelry has been like a thing that sort of crept up on me, but it hasn't been like something that I'm too
Like, actively trying.
No, but also something that I'm actually like worried about in terms of that something can go wrong. But maybe if I were to like trying to like commission a suit or something and down the line, it wouldn't be an awkward dilemma, but it would be like I would have to think about a few things that I haven't thought about in a while, and I would be like maybe more worried about getting things wrong. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm right there with you, because I'm so used to buying vintage and buying, ready to wear, that I do mess up when I get my suits done. I feel like, because it's all on you, right? Because you're kind of the boss, telling them how things or what the measurements are. It's on you if things go wrong, And the thing with tailoring is that, you get like a billion suits commissioned, you're always gonna figure out what to change for the next one, and then the awkwardness, at least for me, becomes like, okay, do I I'm conscious of this mistake? Do I like wearing this thing? Like my first, like my Ascot Chang suit. I think I mentioned before, like the pants are a little bit more tapered than I'd like, but I got that based on a pair of Indochino ones that I thought fit me the best, because I wanted it, to be kind of like, okay, well, I widened the block on the Indochino ones; these fit better. I don't know if I want my Ascot Chang bespoke suit to be like the fit of my Polo Ralph Lauren's or whatever. So it was like I should be safe on this. And then now I don't really wear it as much. Obviously, I also prefer cotton over wool suits just based on my lifestyle. But yeah, it's that awkward kind of phase with
that's why I prefer
that's
like the pre-existing classic, like something like the open road is like, okay, it's a risk, but it's also like a classically defined piece that has its own. It defines its own context.
Going to Cody and building it.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going into like a terra incognita there. It's like the question is whether you can do that in a nice fitting way. But it's once you have the great advantage of the classic piece, you have to trust it. There's like, even with other things in life, two things that have stood the test of time have done so for a reason, and you can, even if you don't know how to bridge the gap from here to there just now, that piece is going to be worth it, or at least it's possible to do so, even if you're not able to do it now. So when you see something that's a little bit out there, you can pick it up and work on it later. And I do like to have this type of challenges around. The question is how expensive they are and so on. And the open road was definitely a provocation in that sense, sort of how seriously do I take like the Western direction. But buying it was kind of embarrassing. I like went to this Western store. It was like this hat bar where this guy just like were just giving me the runaround, like trying to keep me away from like the Stetsons. It was weird. I got the feeling I didn't belong, and then finally found them. But it's that's Missouri for you, I guess. When you're out there.
I do like the idea of just like having things that, like, I have a bunch of stuff in my closet that I didn't necessarily buy and say, oh, I'll figure this out later. But as I've mentioned, basically every week at this point, I have a bunch of stuff in my closet that I stopped wearing, either because I was like, oh, this isn't really my style anymore, or like, I just outgrew it. But now that I lost some weight last year and I'm able to fit in a bunch of stuff. So it's taking these pieces that I bought in high school and being like, okay, how can I like kind of wear this again? Like, can I, do I want to keep this? Do I want to sell this? Do I want to try to figure out,
Well,
how it's gonna be? And it is a fun challenge.
Well, that's that kind of brings to mind one of the topics that I guess we'll have to save for another time. But it's something that our good friend John Reuter brought up about archiving your own clothing, or do you sell it and move on with it? How does that work? And maybe it's just because you and I have got, we've done vintage where people just hold on to things forever. But it's like, you and I don't really sell things that often. We try and hold on to it and see how if we're ever gonna wear it again, right? Because we liked it for a reason, and we also don't want to waste. We also don't want to waste money. I'm still here, right?
You're still here.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good.
Well, you're
Sorry,
like,
because
your video feed froze for a second as you asked that, but you're still here.
Okay, got it. I saw my internet like go down for a second. But like if I'm looking at it, like I bought my brown suede Chelsea boots a long time ago. Like that was like maybe back in like college, and I definitely felt weird wearing them. It doesn't make sense why I bought them. Like they have a chisel toe, so even in my early like SLP light outfits, like, and of course it doesn't really work, whatever, it was bad. But yeah, it felt a little awkward doing it, but I'm glad I kept them because I got not back into it, but I got into like the whole like late 60s, 70s thing kind of, and and they became like my like boot, like I wear them way more than my desert boots, and they work for a lot of different outfits with jeans. Sometimes I wear them with flannels. Like they're really nice. And I'm glad I kind of got through the awkwardness phase. I'm glad I didn't sell it off, and just felt like it was bricked or anything. And that's kind of like a trade-off that people tend to have whenever they try something new, right? Like, is it gonna be for you? Do you think it'll ever be for you? That's kind of a big question that is hard to answer. But in most cases, it pays off because the older you get and the more experience and the more inspiration that you gather, it just helps. It helps you learn to it. Spencer, in particular, what pieces from high school that you didn't wear for a while, then you're finding a way to incorporate again?
Well, I mean, it's like it maybe not as like going as far back as no, from high school, yeah, like a couple of the like Gap short jackets. I've been wearing.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I've been wearing like some of the like belt back ones more recently. Or it's mostly just been like shirts and stuff like that. But like I said, yeah, I found like a 1910s kind of like ecru with white stripe, like detachable collar shirt.
Oh yeah, detachable. Yeah.
And I think well again, I like sometimes try it on, and I just don't really like like band collars that much, but I still think they look cool. I just need to figure it out, but that's something that I've been looking at. But yeah.
I mean, I think it's cool that we still have them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I have anything from high school, other than my
the shirt I'm wearing now is from high school.
Yeah.
Oh, but even like even like sport coats. I've been wearing sport coats casually more often.
Oh yeah, that fit you wore last week was pretty great. I love that one.
Yeah, so,
I haven't seen that tweed jacket in a while.
Yeah, and we'll see.
Most of my clothes are still from high school since I haven't grown much.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't know how you do it.
But yeah, I mean,
You didn't immediately go to college and throw it out.
I don't know. I anticipate it. I'm still planning on moving this year. It's kind of been put on hold for the time being, but this year I'm going to be moving. And I imagine my style is going to change when I move out. Maybe because of necessity, because I have to kind of pare down.
Well,
but also I think because I'm going to, I'm just going to want to be more quote unquote adult, and so I can imagine myself wearing more sport coats, stuff like that.
Hey, I mean, it'll be. It's kind of a weird thing though, where when your life dictates your style, that's different than like saying like because something we kind of touched on. I mean, we kind of did both, but like what you want to give up versus like trying something completely new.
Yeah.
Like we don't really have. I guess we kind of do have some stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, really quick, Kiyoshi, when you're getting the 18E stuff, what's the thought process there? Does that feel awkward for you?
Kind of. I mean, there's some pieces that are definitely less accessible than others. But it's really just a matter of, I've kind of explained this before, like I'm into the clothing from like an emotional standpoint, and the things that like resonate with me are primarily textiles. So I just love the textile. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool textile. I don't know if that's a cut that's going to work well for me, or how that necessarily fits into my wardrobe as it stands now, but I know I want to try it. And sometimes, it takes a year of something sitting in your closet, and then you've bought more clothes in the meantime, and then you discover one day, oh, these two, the little serendipitous meeting of items in your wardrobe that works for you, and it goes together, and I think that makes it less awkward. It is a little weird entering and trying out new aesthetics, just because one, it's just not something you're familiar with styling on yourself, and two, because you probably don't have the depth in your wardrobe
to support it.
Yeah, to support it. So you're trying to put it with stuff that, maybe for color theory it works, or it's like, well, it's a pant with a shirt or pant with a sweater, but the vibes they're on different wavelength. So that can, I think is, I think I'm more attuned to that now than I would have been 10 years ago, where I'm like, the reason why this isn't working
you can quantify it a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier to understand, and the downside is you don't have that ignorance is bliss kind of attitude with clothing. It's too much knowledge being dangerous sort of thing too.
The burden of knowledge.
Yeah.
I think something that we've all kind of talked about here is that most of the experimentation we do feel fairly natural to us. It's not as stark as trying a completely new aesthetic, like I guess, and I guess it really depends on how you view your own aesthetic. Because I mean, to me, at least lately with the e-boy thing or whatever you want to call it, I still think it was pretty natural. I know on paper it doesn't seem like I said earlier, like it was like, oh, it just like I said in the chat where it's like, okay, this is what an e guy would wear if he was already into classic menswear. So like, okay, instead of like H&M shirt, it'd probably be like a sawtooth Gap shirt or what I'm wearing, right? Or like like what Bryson says, like a linen work shirt, CPO shirt with like black linen trousers, and and then wearing some fucking rings and maybe like a neck, like like I think one of them's wearing like a necklace or like a Thunderbird necklace or something like that. But it's like finding ways to make it cohesive. So I feel like one of the most intriguing things that I found about menswear is that I love doing spins on things like that. Like I love seeing like Evan Kenori as a way of like reinterpreting tailoring, right? And we've talked about that before. And I know that for some people, it's not that easy. It's not easy to make those connections, especially if you don't like suits or you don't think you're going to wear them. So it's a lot harder to be like, okay, well, this is just a suit, because then someone would be like, well, I don't like suits to begin with. And it's like, well, can't help you there, But it's that idea, I think, of finding ways to make it less awkward. And the way you make things less awkward is find a way that you identify with it. Find a way that feels comfortable. Like I think like when I look at 18 East, I actually don't. I'm not. What's it called? Intimidated by it. I am. I don't like how short they are, but other than that, it's like, oh, I know I could wear this. Like I'm wearing a Jinbei right now. I've also worn this like top out with Spencer before, and I feel like it makes perfect sense, even though, again, it doesn't seem like it would. It seems, at least in practice, it feels perfectly fine. And I don't know if that's just over time.
I think if you're experimenting with a style, it's easier if it's a style that's more casual than what you're used to than if it's more formal than what you're used to.
That's a great point.
Oh, yeah, that is definitely true.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Me too.
Thanks.
Easy.
You're welcome.
Easy clap.
Sure thing. Anytime.
Motion carries.
Yeah, motion of the Pokken. All right.
Closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think that was all the closing thoughts. That's good. I think that's why it helps if you are into hashtag menswear early on, as opposed to later, because then
get that shit over with.
And I'm wondering, how common is it to like really completely just like on a dime, like try a new look. I feel like a lot of this is a slower evolution.
That's why I cut my own bangs.
Yeah.
Always try something new.
Mm-hmm. You're brave.
Thank you.
You're a brave man, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
The Bane?
They call me Brave Boy for that reason.
So many BBs tonight.
So many BBs.
Yeah.
I got
Bean count 4.
Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, thank you for joining us today, tonight on the stream.
That's right. You were here
tonight for us.
Really great.
Don't forget you were here.
Yeah.
Never forget.
I never forget.
If you weren't here, we don't like you.
Thank you, Kiyoshi, for submitting or bringing up this topic in our Discord. Again, we've got a lot to go. I mean, we've got the whole idea of archiving. We've also got Matt who wants to talk about bags, which I think is really good.
We all got our own baggage, don't we?
We all got
that is my bag, baby.
We got our own baggage.
Yeah. That's not what I was referring to, but whatever.
Oh, whoa! She's right behind me, isn't she?
Let's